Good afternoon. Dr. Ruda, could you give us an update on the situation with Montreal's bars? Have we found new outbreaks, and are the contract tracers able to find all the cases right now?
Actually, Montreal is making an inquiry, as other regions in Quebec, about all the cases. What we observe is there is younger people from 15 to 90, 29 persons, and have been some of those persons who have been in different bars. At least, actually, I've heard about 8 situations, but now they are trying to make the contact tracing. But it's very complicated because also sometimes people don't tell where they have been. So it's why Saturday the public health direction decided to make a screening of different bars to make sure that they will capture, I would say, people who could be asymptomatic but already having the disease and control I would say, the situation. Actually, the situation is under control, but as it's more a preventive approach, very aggressive one that we tell that we want to test in those periods of the confinement, the same way that if there is an outbreak in an industry, construction, or other places, we are going to make those tests available for that specific situation. And it's clear that sometimes also in Montreal, people go from one bar to another one and then to another one in the same evening. So it's why it's more complex, and for nothing for trying to really catch up and control those situations. It's why this mass screening test is offered. And even I had the information that yesterday there were more people presenting to those places than suspected to come, because before that there was not people coming to testing, and they will adjust the offer of tests to the demand.
In Montreal, there have been like bumps of COVID-19 cases in connection to bars, and all over in most countries in the world, drinking establishments are considered more likely for outbreaks and transmission. So I guess what I'm asking is, why is it so important to open bars in the province when we know that they are perhaps a riskier place to be?
Okay. Maybe I can start with that. There's two things. I think when we opened on June 25th, we had certain rules, and we've seen what happened in the last 2 weeks. And therefore, what we have done, we said if we want to keep the bar open, we need to be more restrictive on certain measures. And I think the message has been understood. We will see, as the Premier has said very clearly, we had more than 600 visits during the weekend, more than that, but roughly in excess of 600. And we're pleased with the initial result. What I think we're concerned is before those measures were in place, and that's what Dr. Arruda said, and I'm repeating, before those measures had been put in place, there are certain bars when we've seen, discovered some of those contagious. So what we're trying to make sure is we're saying, are those cases where it did happen in 8 bars, did they happen before we had those new measures? And this is the reason that the next week, and I'm putting a very clear restriction on time, I want to see the evolution on the number of cases. Remember last week when we announced the measure, I said we were for a few days in excess of 100. And this is a mobile average that we follow. We're still in that 100. Today was 100, yesterday was just a bit over 100. So we'll monitor very closely, especially with bars. If we were to see that the measure that we have announced are not sufficient, or if we see bar owners that are not respecting the rules, we'll act accordingly. But I think we need to give the benefit of the doubt. I think what we've seen this weekend, this last weekend, was very encouraging. But I'll tell you, as I mentioned last week, we will closely monitor that. Now, that's the reason the Premier has said over the next weekend, which is the first weekend of the construction holiday, we're still going to have those inspectors monitoring and looking at all the bars, just make sure that those measures are being implemented. And if they're not, as I mentioned, we'll act accordingly. But I think we give them the benefit of the doubts. And I just want to say, as the Premier has said, very clearly, we see that our message have been understood not only from the bar owners but from the population. So let's see that we are reasonable. I think we've seen that, but we'll monitor that very, very closely in the coming days.